Focaccia, probably one of the most famous flatbreads out there, and it gave rise to one thing that we all love, the modern pizza. So why should you make your own focaccia? The main reason is it's a fantastic gateway into baking bread. It's super easy to make, requires only a few ingredients, but the best part, it's absolutely delicious. And what's even more delicious is the recipe that I'm gonna show you last. It's an evolution of focaccia, the Sicilian pizza. It's one of my absolute favorites. And shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. It's the all-in-one platform that makes publishing your websites an absolute breeze. Now let's get making dough. Okay, so this is a video that's gonna show you everything you need to know about focaccia. If you've baked no loaves or if you've baked 100 loaves of focaccia, I promise you're gonna learn something from that. That's my promise to you, me to you. So first up, I'm gonna show you how to make a basic focaccia all the way through, and then I'm gonna show you different variations of focaccia and where you can take this basic dough and elevate it, or not, because plain focaccia is also absolutely delicious. So surprise to no one, focaccia starts with flour. And flour, being the main ingredient, is probably the most important ingredient. You want bread flour, you want strong flour, high protein flour. You can buy it in most supermarkets in Australia now. I'm sure you can buy it in supermarkets all over the world. Ideally something around 12% or higher in protein. It should say on the back of the packet how much protein it's got in it. And the protein is it's the structure that holds everything together. If you don't have a high enough protein, your crumb structure or the interior of the bread is not gonna be right. So high protein flour in the bowl. Next, water. We talk about hydration or percentage of hydration a lot in doughs, and focaccia tends to be quite a high hydration dough. So this is around 80% hydration, which I think you can go higher, absolutely. I think once you get over 80%, you start kind of entering an area of baking that's quite technical and requires a lot of practice to get it right. So I think this is the sweet spot for the amount of hydration for anyone. I think it's kind of easy enough to handle, but you still get a really good crumb inside. Water is warm. The reason it's warm is because we want to activate our yeast faster. In the yeast goes to our water, and we'll give that a mix. We're just trying to dissolve the yeast here, nothing crazy. Leave this to the side and make sure that the yeast is activated. Say you're in an Airbnb and you pull out some random yeast, you have no idea whether it works or not, that's probably worth doing. I know this yeast works because I use it all the time, so I'm not going to stress about letting this kind of foam up. So how do you know if your yeast is activated? Well, it'll start foaming and bubbling at the top. It'll look lively. So this is instant yeast, not baker's yeast. So baker's yeast looks like a wet brick. That's a weird analogy, a wet brick. Fresh yeast. If you're using fresh yeast, you basically triple the amount of weight. So if you're using 7 grams like we are here, you're gonna use 21 grams of fresh yeast. However, I'll be very surprised if you're using fresh yeast unless your loved one or a partner happens to be a baker, in which case, just get them to make the bread because they're gonna make it better than you anyway. Okay, so flour, our yeast that's dissolved into water, and olive oil. And the amount of olive oil we use is really important. We want a lot of fat in this. We use more olive oil later, but you need some on your dough now. This here is called a Danish dough whisk, and it's 100% not necessary. If you don't have one of these, just use a wooden spoon. If you do make a lot of bread, these things are super handy. They make it really easy to mix dough. So we're just gonna start mixing this, and at some point pretty early on, we're gonna add our salt, also super important. Now, there's a lot of common misconceptions around adding salt to yeast. People will say, oh, it's gonna kill your rise and all this stuff. And absolutely, salt will kill yeast, but you need way more of it in direct content than what we're dealing with right now. So don't be afraid to add your salt in early. If you're baking bread or pizza dough, if you're making pizza dough, often you'll see us putting salt in later in the mix, and that's for a different reason. That's not because it's going to kill the yeast. That's because it basically tightens up the dough once you add the salt. So don't be afraid to put the salt in nice and early, because you might forget, and it's just kind of easier in this scenario. We're not really mixing this dough much. So all we're doing at this point is bringing everything together into a shaggy mess. We're pretty close already. Scrape down the sides, make sure you get all that flour in there, and then once it's a mess like this, like a ball that kind of sticks together, put it in the center of your bowl. Hot tip, water is your friend. So wet your hand and then get all that dough off and get it into the bowl. So from here, we're going to cover this with a tea towel. The reason we cover it with a tea towel is because we don't want breeze to get across this. It'll start drying out the outside. And then we'll start the stretch and fold technique after 30 minutes, okay? So it's been 30 minutes since we mixed this dough, and you can see here, it looks like one big mass, and we're definitely getting some action. Like you can see that there's bubbles forming. which is great, but all the flour is now nice and hydrated. We need to now do our first set of stretch and folds. So technique for stretch and fold. We're gonna do it 4 times. So we're gonna get under the dough, we're gonna bring it towards ourselves. So you need a wet hand for this. One of these little plastic scrapers is handy too for scraping down the sides, but I think you can do it 2 ways. You can use the scraper, or you can do it with your bare hand. I prefer to do it with my hand. So wiggle your fingers under one side of the dough, the side that's furthest away from you. Stretch the dough up and then bring it towards yourself. Turn the bowl 1/4 of the way, and you're going to repeat that same step. Get your fingers behind the dough, stretch the dough up as far as it will stretch, and then pull it over. See there, it started to rip on that one. As soon as it starts to rip like that, you've stretched the dough as far as you can. One more turn, nice wet hand, under the back, stretch it up as far as it can, over the top, and the last one. So things to remember here. This dough is alive and active, right? And what we're trying to do here is both mix the flour in amongst the water nicely so we don't get any of these little dry bits. You'll feel it now, there's like dry bits of flour that's not fully hydrated. We're also trying to incorporate air. So we want to be gentle. We're not just like up and over, up and over, up and over. We want to be gentle, take our time, stretch it as far as it'll go and come over. As we keep doing this step, this dough is going to change dramatically. It's going to become smooth, it's going to become more elastic, and you'll be able to stretch it further, and it will start tightening up as well. So at this point, just good hygiene, scrape your sides down, make sure it tucks it in so that it's got some moisture to feed off, and we're going to rest it for another 30 minutes. 30 minutes is the time that works best for me here in Sydney, Australia. So it's the start of summer here. It's about, I'm guessing it's 24, 25 degrees in this room. So 30 minutes works well for this temperature. And I think anything kind of under 20 degrees where you are, you're gonna let that time period kind of go out to 40 minutes. If it's really cold where you are, 45 minutes. If you're above 25, 26 degrees Celsius, go 20, 25 minutes. So some people will do this section, or they'll do proving in their oven, and they'll say, turn your oven off, but have the light on. I don't think that's relevant anymore unless you've got an old light bulb in there that's like a halogen light bulb. The new light bulbs don't emit any heat. Second fold, let's see what we're dealing with. Nice and jiggly. Okay, I want to start where we started the last time. Lift it up, and I can already feel it starting to get a lot more strength. 1/4 turn, lift it up. Now you really want to try and get it as far over as you can, but don't stretch it, don't like force it, if that makes sense. And the last one, see that last one is already, it's so much tighter than the first one. So it's really important that we start where we left off. Little housekeeping, keep that bowl clean. The keeping the bowl clean thing is like, it might feel like a bit pedantic, but the reason that we want to keep it clean is that if you have dough left here and it dries up, at some point there's a chance that you can kind of fold it through, and then you're going to get like a lumpy dry part, which no one wants. No one wants a lumpy dry one, do they? Another 30 minutes, we'll come back for the third stretch and fold. Okay, number 3. Ding! Look at that. It's looking smooth, it's looking jiggly. There's like less and less dry bits. We're going to do this one more time, then we'll see where we're at. You can do 4 or 5 depending on where you think you're at, but we'll see how it feels. So under, get it up as far as you can and over. 1/4 turn, under, over, 1/4 turn. And she's starting to tighten up. I think that's probably going to be our last fold, as in last round of folds. You can see here, we're already getting some bubbles too, like big bubbles. Do our housekeeping. Okay, we'll leave that for another 30 minutes and then we'll see. I think it'll be ready at that point to get into a dish and start proving. It's already kind of started proving. Start the final proof. So, our plain focaccia, look at that. Smooth. It's got a lot of jiggle in it, so it's full of air, which we want to try and keep. So the next step for us is to put this into the dish that we're going to cook it in, and then we're going to let it rise for the last time. So I'm going to break this up into small ones, which I think works incredibly well, and it's also kind of cute, you know, you give everyone their own individual focaccia at the table, but you could also just put this in a big tray, into like an oven tray or a cast iron pan, but not ceramic roasting dish. They take a long time to heat up, so you don't get that initial heat burst, which is really important when we're baking focaccia. So we're going to put these into these little enamel dishes here and make sure that they're oven safe. These ones definitely are. And we're going to add some oil, olive oil, good quality olive oil. Make sure it goes all the way up the sides, and you want excess. There should be oil rolling around in the bottom of it. Olive oil is good for you. We've scoured the internet for people that are having issues with focaccia, and one of the most common things it feels like is that people are scared to use a lot of oil. I think it's going to be oily. This dough is going to soak up all this oil real quick. So I'm going to have it greasy hand. What we're trying to do here is create the same size-ish, so it'll be perfect in each one. You can weigh this out so that they are exactly the same size. Let's do that. Let's be professional. Grease that up a little bit. What we're not trying to do is handle this dough. So the least amount of handling possible. So I'm going to use my bench scraper to cut a piece of dough that's roughly the same size that we want and pull it out. So that's 140 grams. So just take that dough and then kind of stretch it so it's roughly the same size as the dish that you're putting it in. Just like that. See, like in this one, I've gone 125 grams, which isn't enough. So I'm going to put some more. Now I've gone 150, which is too much. Put some more. Take that extra piece and put it on the underneath, okay? And then stretch it out. Because you want this top section as kind of smooth as it kind of can be. And you really want this to fill these out so you can kind of overstretch them. The other thing is to make sure that we're not putting too much dough in here. We want a really high focaccia. The answer isn't put heaps in a tin. You're going to struggle to cook it at that point. So the tin, this is about as full as you want these tins. These are going to rise up pretty high anyway. But you definitely don't want the focaccia to go over the side of the tin. As soon as it goes in the hot oven, this dough is going to start rising quickly. And if you don't give it enough space to kind of breathe and open up, it will start collapsing on itself. So I'm going to do the rest of this in this little cast iron. I think cast irons work really well for focaccias. Same as before, lots of oil all up the sides. Okay, so final proof. We'll let those sit there for another 30 minutes until they've grown at least another kind of 30%. And then we'll turn the final step before we put them in the oven. Also worth mentioning, your oven. If you haven't preheated your oven, then do it now. Ideally, you turn your oven on 45 minutes before you're baking focaccia because you want to give it a good amount of time to preheat. Preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius, which is like 430 Fahrenheit. All right, let's have a look, see if they're good to go in the oven. Oh, they're looking good. So put your focaccia into a Squarespace, much like the sponsor of this video. Squarespace makes publishing websites incredibly easy with flexible website templates for every use and category. You can customize your look, update content, and add new features to fit your needs. Their design intelligence uses AI technology to unlock your best ideas, personalize your website, and tailor it to your needs so that you can create an aesthetic that best suits your online presence. And with Squarespace payments, they make it easy for your customers to come to you. With a few clicks, you can start receiving payments straight away. When you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/AndyCooks for a free trial and use code AndyCooks to save 10% off your first purchase. That's AndyCooks, all one word, all caps lock. Now let's get back to that dough. So from this point, we need to dimple it, put a bit of salt on the top, and then we're going to get it in the oven. So more olive oil on the top, get a little bit on your fingies. I'm going to push right in, pretty much all the way to the bottom. We don't want to try and pierce the dough at the bottom, but we don't want to push to the bottom. And just jiggle your fingers around a bit. So why do we do these dimples? Well, a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is it gives lovely little crivets for oil and flavor to kind of somewhere for them to land. And more importantly, it kind of evens out the air bubbles and it stops it rising like a loaf and doming over. So it kind of pushes the big air bubbles out and it gives us somewhere for those air bubbles to go. The last thing we need to do is good quality flaky sea salt all over the top. To the oven. Oh no, what a disaster. We'll deal with that later. There we go. So like I was talking about earlier, that is set to 220 degrees Celsius, which is like 430 Fahrenheit. And now why I think that temperature works really well is I think it's nice and hot, but it's not too hot that you start to kind of really darken up the top too much before the center's cooked, especially in thicker focaccias. Often online, I've seen people say, put your oven as hot as you can go, which I've been guilty of saying myself in the past as well. I think having a constant temperature that everyone can get to is really important. Some ovens will go to 230, some will go to 250, some will go hotter than that. So saying a blanket, put your oven as hot as you can, I think is not a great it's not great recipe writing. So I'm gonna check these after 20 minutes. I reckon the small ones will probably be ready at about then. I think the bigger one down below will probably take closer to 25 to 30 minutes. And that's important to remember too. Times for baking can vary greatly depending on how warm your dough is before you put it in, how good your oven's airflow is. There's lots of things. It's not kind of Bible, it's not gospel. Check it after 20 minutes. You don't even have to open the oven, just have a look in and see if it needs any longer. All right, 20 minutes. And these little ones are looking stunning. For me, I reckon that's a nice amount of color. And then this bigger one, looks like it's cooked, but it doesn't have quite as much color. So we're gonna put that in for another, I'm gonna say 6 minutes. Okay, so now both of them are out of the oven. We wanna let these rest as they are for like 30 minutes. You wanna serve them hot, but you just wanna kind of let them just come down in temperature a bit before you even touch them, before you try and turn them out. All right, it's been 26 minutes, but I can't wait a second longer. So it might just require a little bit of finesse to get out of there. Just get something thin, just gonna loosen it up. Whoa, look at that. There you go. I'll serve it with just olive oil. If you want to annoy the Italians, you could do it with butter, but olive oil is the way to go, I think. All right, let's rip into this. Look at that. Nice crumb, nice and light, crunchy outside. Just go straight, see what it's like. Can't beat fresh bread. That's delicious, absolutely delicious. I should not talk with my mouth full. But now we know how to make a basic focaccia. Let's start riffing on this idea a little bit. So focaccia, as ancient as it is, it's really cool to start seeing people innovate with it again. Shout out to Soul Snack, she'll be linked below. She's blowing up lately and for good reason, her videos are incredible. But I started seeing her do this where she's substituting water for other things other than water, like stock. So she did like a birria version, she did a pho version, she did like a tomato soup version. And it's one of those things that you see and you go, why didn't I think of that? It seems so simple, yet it's so innovative, dyslexia. So we're gonna make one with chicken stock today because it looks sick. And I think it's gonna be delicious. Same as before, same amount of flour, same amount of warm water. So this is at like 40 degrees Celsius. In goes the yeast. Give it a mix. Same amount of stock, not water, Andrew. And then same process as before. Into the flour, olive oil. And you could go crazy with this. Like, actually, I've just had a genius idea and it's too late, but you could use an infused olive oil. Huh. You know, like you could use like a basil infused olive oil, or I've even got like a garlic infused olive oil out there. Salt, quick, mix it before your yeast dies. Don't be silly, Andrew. Your yeast's not gonna die. There's no water in that. So we are just gonna leave this similar to the plain one and keep it very simple, just to see how much flavor adding that stock changes compared to just water. 30 minutes, we'll start stretching and folding. So our chicken stock bread is almost ready to go. It's had its 4 stretch and folds. We're gonna get it into a dish and then we'll prove it one last time. So I'm not gonna put too much flavor on this, but I guess putting it with chicken stock made me think of one of my all-time favorite chicken dishes, a classic roast chicken. So we're gonna flavor it with some thyme and some garlic infused oil. This is actually garlic and parmesan infused oil, but hey, parmesan's delicious. Not sure what it has to do with roast chickens, but anyway. So same as before, I'm gonna grease up our tray really well, spread it around, up the sides, get it on your fingies. Ooh, it does smell like parmesan. And we'll get our dough in there. Now, this dough certainly behaves different to other doughs. It feels a lot tighter, and I'm not sure why. I'm guessing the protein in the stock has something to do with it. Maybe there's some extra salt in there. Who knows? I'm gonna stretch this out further just so it fills out our tray. 30 minutes, we'll come back, give it some dimples, put some thyme in it, a little bit of extra olive oil. Job's a good one. All right, so to get this ready for the oven, we are going to do it slightly differently. Because this herb is so small, we're gonna pour a little bit more oil on first, and then we're gonna just put the herb in on top and then do our dimples. Because I don't really want to do it after. I think you're going to be struggle to actually push it all in anyway. So we can get some of it in when we're pushing our dimples, and some of it we'll just have to sacrifice. All right, ready for our dimples. Get a little bit of grease up our fingies a little bit. Same as before. All the way to the bottom. Give them a wiggle and pull them out. Little sprinkle of flaky salt to the oven. All right. So the chicken stock focaccia, we baked this for 35 minutes, and then I pulled it out and I've let it rest for about 35 minutes as well. But I'm super interested to see what this tastes like. The crumb's still pretty good, and it did feel a lot tighter even when I was doing the stretch and folds. It does have a mild kind of chickeny smell to it. Let's see what it tastes like. It's not super pronounced. You can definitely taste a bit of, like chickeny flavor at the back, but the texture is not quite as good. It's a bit tighter in the crumb, and I don't know whether that's because of the stock or something that I did wrong. But I think to get a better result or a better flavor, you're gonna need to use something punchier than just straight up stock. Maybe that's why Soul Snack always did things like pho and birria. Definitely not bad, just different. So flavoring focaccias is an incredible way to not only add flavor to your focaccia, it's also a great way to use up little bits of ingredients, and it's a great way to kind of just change things up. So I've got a dough here that I prepared earlier, and it's good to go. I have I think this is around a 35 centimeter, I guess, ish, maybe 30 centimeter cast iron pan that's enamel coated. Doesn't need to be that. It's also round, which I like doing focaccias round. I think they make great sandwiches. Lots of olive oil, as usual. Up the sides, make sure my hand's nice and oily. Now we're gonna really carefully pull this whole piece of dough out, give it a stretch, and in the dish. Overstretch it. We want to try and keep it like round. We want it to fill the dish. You also want to try and keep it even. So if you've done it like here, it's a bit bigger. I'm going to stretch it some more in that part. So we're going to need to prove that for another half an hour. See, I've just picked that piece of dough up and I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to get it underneath there like that. Prove that for another 30 minutes. You can do it with the lid on or a tea towel. I prefer to do it with a tea towel because in case that goes kind of crazy, it's not going to stick to the tea towel as much as it would a lid. And then while that's doing that, we can get our flavorings ready. So the flavoring we're going with today is some like green Sicilian olives. These are pipped olives. You can keep them whole, or I like to kind of just, do that and drop it on the floor. I kind of like to pull them apart, and I don't like to cut them. I like to break them. I think they're just kind of, I don't know. This isn't like a straight edge type of thing, even though I am straight edge. It's more a rustic thing. So just rip them apart. You also could just leave them whole too. And then we're gonna do some preserved lemon, which we're just gonna take the flesh out and just kind of chiffonade the actual lemon itself. And we got some fresh oregano. But go crazy with this. I've done them with sun-dried tomato, confit garlic and onion. They went all crispy and dark on the top, and everyone roasted me online for it, even though it was delicious. Internet, hey? You can do pesto and bocconcini, artichoke, and anchovy. You could do like a quattro formaggio, so like 4 cheese one. It's literally anything will go really well on this. I also love doing potato, like potato and rosemary works really well. And there's even a sweet version of this dish. So when we're doing flavor focaccia, it's just like the plain one. We're gonna grease up our fingers and then we're gonna push our fingers in to create the dimples before we start adding the flavors. So the trick when we're putting ingredients into focaccias is that we have to make sure that we push it in and it becomes a part of the dough. And the reason we do that is because we cook it at such a high temperature. If we don't, you're gonna burn it. So the 220 degrees for 30 minutes potentially this will cook for will 100% completely scorch the olives or anything that's kind of sitting above the line. Now, I don't mind a bit of char, but you don't want the whole thing to be burnt. So a little bit's fine. Obviously you don't want all of it. So I put the soft stuff on first and then work up to the harder stuff and try and clump it together. And that way when you push it in, it's all gonna kind of go in and kind of get pushed under the dough line as one thing. So there's the oregano at first. Now I'm putting pieces of preserved lemon on top, and now the green olives. So now we need to try and push this in. It doesn't need to be completely sealed, but you do want it in pretty far. As the bread rises, it should come in and close it a little bit. Finally, just a little sprinkle of sea salt into the oven. One of the other things I like to do sometimes, especially if like I'm making this for friends or for a dinner party, is I will drizzle some more olive oil on the top. As soon as it comes out of the oven, it should absorb it all in. Get it around the edges too. Yum. Let that sit there for 30 minutes before we take it out. Carve it open. Carve it open? You don't carve bread, you slice bread, Andy. You silly duffer. All right, been 30 minutes. We're gonna get this thing out of here and see what it tastes like. I reckon it's gonna be delicious. Oof. You ready? You ready? Oots. Look at the bubbles. Take this. You cut it this way, put some mortadella in here, some stracciatella, some basil. Mate, that's a sandwich to feed the family. I checked my fridge. I have some stracciatella, but I don't have any mortadella. So we'll just have a slice. Oh, look at the crumb on it. Beautiful. Yum. This is the first time I've done it with preserved lemon, and it's delicious. It tastes like light and fresh and summery. Honestly, that, stracciatella, mortadella, some basil, delicious. Okay, on to my favorite and genuinely one of my favorite recipes of all time. I've eaten this pizza a lot when I ate it in Sicily. I don't know whether it's like, because I was there, it was sunny, I was with Caitlin, but it changed my life. It was delicious. So we're gonna make a Sicilian style pizza from the same dough. So exactly the same process as before. We're gonna mix our dough, we're gonna do the rounds of stretch and folds, and then we'll come back to that later. While that's proofing, let's make the tomato sauce. Okay, so it's a very simple tomato sauce. Like all good things in life, it's simple, but we cook it. Unlike you would for like a Neapolitan pizza, which is always done raw. For this one, we cook the sauce first. You'll see why we need to cook it in a minute. So good quality tin tomatoes, whole and peeled. The whole is necessary. You get better quality tomatoes, I think. We're gonna crush them ourselves as well. I've got a piece of basil here in the bottom of my pot. In go the tomatoes. We don't wanna like add water to this tin and rinse it out, because you're gonna like water your tomatoes down, which we don't want. So just get as much as you can out. Clean hand, crush your tomatoes. Put the tomatoes in your hand and squeeze to get all that delicious juice out. And you want to do this for like 4 or 5 minutes, because you don't want any big pieces. Don't be afraid to kind of squeeze that basil around as well and get all the oils out of it. Now, only other thing we're going to add to that is just a little bit of dried oregano. We don't want heaps, otherwise it just starts to taste like that fake herb flavor. And of course, a pinch of salt. Onto the heat. We're going to cook that for like, once it simmers, 10 minutes. We're just trying to cook the tomatoes out, and that's good to go. Okay, so the cheese, super important. If you're using a Florida latte or a buffalo mozzarella for the top, which I do encourage you, you probably should be. It's a lot higher moisture or hydration than like a pizza mozzarella, or like I guess an American or an Australian mozzarella that's designed for pizza. So what we need to do, I've got a tray here with a rack over the top and some paper. We're going to dry this out a little bit. You can do this the day before or a couple of hours, it doesn't really matter. Cut your slices and put it onto the paper and let it dry out. And then when this cheese melts, it's going to have less moisture in it, so it's going to make our dough that we've made so much effort to keep nice and crispy not go soggy. So do it like that in the fridge, at least 2 hours, or overnight, even better. All right, tomato sauce is done. Just going to pour this out into another container, make a mess. We want this kind of room temperature when we put it on the pizza, so it's only going to take an hour or something to cool down, but you don't really want to put it straight on while it's still hot. You also don't really want it fridge cold either, so if it's from the fridge you made it the day before, pull it out, let it come to room temperature. If you've just cooked it like I have, it's going to leave it out to cool down for like an hour until you can put your finger in it without burning your finger. It's also worth mentioning at this point, I don't think I have yet, this is not a traditional style dough for Sicilian style pizza. This is taking a focaccia dough and turning it into, or being inspired by, the Sicilian style of pizza. Just wanted to get that out there. So we need to get that in there, and we need to fill the tin, same as before. Olive oil, don't be shy, on your hands too. Make sure you get the sides. So this is a baking dish. It's a really heavy cast iron one. It's really good for this, gives you nice crusty edges, but any kind of baking dish will work. So now we're gonna take our dough, and we really wanna stretch this before we get it in the tray if we can. Just like you would a pizza, you get gravity to help you. Okay. And that goes. Now we're gonna overstretch it and then put it back in. Make sure it's kind of even. We've got this, like, if you can see right here, we've got a thicker area. So we wanna kind of distribute some of that dough. Ideally, we don't want to put a hole in it like I just did, but it's not as much of an issue as a normal pizza. So press it into the corners. You really want this to fill this tray before we let it sit there and prove. If you have got a hole like that, just pinch it together and it'll be fine. All right, I'm happy with that. We're gonna cover it with a tea towel, same as before. We're gonna let it prove for 30 minutes. So our dough is almost ready for our pizza. So the difference between this is that we're gonna par cook this before we put our toppings on. And that's important because unlike the flavor focaccias, we don't want to push things in. So if we put the toppings on now, they're just going to burn. So I want a little bit of oil here, not too much. We are going to dimple this, but not crazy. So just little dimples in here. So then we're going to go into the oven, 220 degrees like the other ones. After 15 minutes, we'll pull it back out. All right, it's been going for 50. Oh, she's smoky. Steam burn, be careful, it hurts. 15 minutes, out they come, they hit. Okay, you really want to work fast there. Now don't rush, don't hurt yourself, excuse you, but you don't want to kind of muck around. In Sicily, they kind of just spread the, it doesn't have to be like perfectly covered in sauce. They kind of like dot it around. And you probably noticed that I do have the basil in here that was in the sauce too. Next, I'm going to put the basil. You could also do the basil after, so it's fresh and green. This will go brownish. I don't mind it. I prefer it cooked because I think you get the oils from the herb going into the bread itself. Okay, next we're actually going to do the parmesan next. And I like to kind of give extra attention to the sides because you get these crusty, like golden parmesan bits all down the sides. A little bit over the top. And finally the mozz spaced evenly. Done. Back to the oven. Okay, another 15 minutes or until the cheese is all golden and delicious. I can't wait to eat that. All right, it's been about 15 minutes. The cheese is looking nice and starting to get some color. All right, it smells delicious. You really have to resist temptation. Just let this chill out for 10 minutes before you try and take it out of the tin. All right, let's get this out of here. Let's see what it tastes like. Ooh. One bite, everyone knows the rules. Delicious, it's light and fluffy on the inside. Lovely crunchy exterior. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And that is probably the easiest slice of pizza you could ever make at home, especially. But I've eaten enough bread to sink someone. There you go. I hope you've learned something if you are a focaccia expert. And if you're not, I encourage you to try some stuff. It's the easiest bread to pull off, and you can take it in so many journeys like we've shown today. If you try a new flavor and you think it's delicious, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, legends. We'll see you next week for another recipe. Peace.